And we are rolling on April 12th, 2018, here at UCLA, where it's a beautiful day. The sunshine is shining. The classroom has been cooled down from a nice wind that's blowing. And we're about to hear from Saloni, who's going to share with us her respect speech. Now, I want to talk something about what Saloni is doing right now before I go through the 7 steps, because you'll notice that Saloni has her fingertips together and she has her thumbs up higher than her fingers. This is a nonverbal concept called steepling, okay? And if you might turn this way too, that's another concept. You'll often see your bosses do this when you ask them for a raise at the office, or your parents will do this. But now turn them back down again and put them just like you had them there. Yeah. I'm really not a big steepling professor. I think it sometimes connotes to the audience that you're feeling a little more confident and towards your audience than you should. Some people think it's even condescending, some scholars. So I recommend you never steeple. When you come up to speak, I recommend that you put your hands just by your side. Let's shake them out right now, let them shake loose. I want to comment on one other aspect of Saloni's, lest you think I'm picking on you, that your sweater fits beautifully. We've had some sweaters in past classes that have obstructed the hands, and we want hands, now keep your hands together right now, I'd like you to, we want hands to be free to communicate. Now what you're doing now in holding and gripping your hands together is you're anxious, and you're squeezing yourself to give yourself reassurance. I don't bite. I'm here to help you. I'm friendly. I'm the friendliest professor you'll ever meet. Okay? So now, in your touch, you're holding yourself. So if you can get in the habit, just let them shake by your side. That's great. Good. Now, Saloni, we have a concept where we stand in the power position, which is in the middle of the room, and that's where you are about. You don't, not too far to the right or to the left, but right in the center. You're not too far back, so it looks like you're afraid of the audience, not too far forward to break the bubble, but just right in the power center of the room, right? Secondly, you are in the power stance. Your feet are wider than your shoulders. Your feet are acting like a tripod, so you do not sway. If you are a swayer, you can lock your knees a little bit, and that will keep you from swaying. But I don't think you're a swayer, so I think you should be okay. The third step is you look around the room, and you're managing attention. You're making sure that all computers are closed, that phones are away, that all eyeballs are upon you. Fourth step is to say to yourself the mantra we've been learning, and I hope you've repeated up to 10,000 times now between the last classroom, which is to look at people in the eyes around the room and to say, I respect you, and really mean it. Just not, I respect you, but no, really, I respect you. And then find friendly eyes near the front and the center, because that's often helpful as for a public speaker, especially when it's a big crowd. If you pick out there's always going to be a smiling person down front. Pick them out and talk to them first. Find friendly eyes near the front and the center. Say your name. Feel the love. Start your speech.
Hi everyone, I'm Saloni.
Hi, Saloni.
So when I first heard the concept of nonverbal respect, I was kind of puzzled because I thought I can say the mantra, I know I'm saying the mantra and I'm showing respect, but the other person might think of it as something, as being polite or courteous. So I wasn't so sure if I would come off as being respectful, but maybe just how I usually am, because I tend to smile a lot. If you were walking down Bruin Walk and I made eye contact with you unexpectedly, I probably would smile at you. So I was kind of skeptical with the idea of saying this mantra, I respect you, and coming off as being respectful versus just being polite or courteous. However, I'm really, really happy that I ended up doing this 48-hour experiment because specifically with the ugly experience I witnessed, I learned a lot about myself and respect in general. But before I start about the ugly, I want to talk about the good and the bad that I experienced. So the good that I experienced was in the classroom. I in general feel like I make a lot of eye contact when I hear my lecturers or when I see the professor lecturing. So I thought maybe I would do something different this time. Instead of just keeping eye contact, I decided to sit in the front of the room, keep the eye contact, and say the mantra, I respect you, but nod pretty oftenly and smile often as well. And instantly I noticed a difference. My professor started to look at me quite more often than usual, and I felt like she was directly talking to me. And so I noticed this difference, and I thought, well, maybe it was just because I was giving her eye contact, but at the end of the class, I feel like we both kind of made this eye contact, and she smiled at me and she nodded. And I think that validated my feelings. And so I realized that by being attentive and with my body language, I was able to come off as just not a polite listener or just a polite student, but actually show her that I respected what she was saying and what she was teaching. So for me, I did learn that you can show being respectful without being mistaken as being positive or just a good listener. Now on to the bad. So the bad is like a lot of you experienced by just walking down Bruin Walk and smiling randomly at somebody, or maybe keeping eye contact for a little bit longer than maybe necessary. But like I mentioned before, I smile pretty often, and that's kind of a normal thing that I go through. Sometimes I'll just smile when I'm walking. And so I wasn't too taken aback by these strange looks or puzzled looks, because for me it was normal and something innate that I do. But I want to say that even though I did receive these looks, I wasn't really taken aback, because half of the time that I got these looks, the other half were reciprocated with smiles. So I can't really say I really had a bad, quote-unquote, bad experience, but just something that I think this is how a person is. But I can say I did have an ugly experience. And my ugly experience took place at John Wooden Center. As I was walking out of the gym, there was a girl ahead of me, maybe 2 or 3 feet, and she kind of turned back a little, so I knew she was aware of my presence, that I was behind her. And so when I was expecting her to hold the door, but it kind of did not happen, and then the door kind of shut right in my face. And so I was really taken aback by that, because I'm pretty sure we had this kind of mutual agreement, but not really. And so when that happened, I was just really surprised, and I feel like I was annoyed. So when I walked out the door, I didn't even bother to see if anyone was behind me. I just let the door close. And instantly, I would say maybe I hadn't taken 5 steps, I was hit with instant regret. I turned around to see if anybody was behind me, and fortunately nobody was. But in that moment, I realized that because someone didn't show me the same respect that I was expecting, I felt like, why should I give it to somebody else either? And I knew that was wrong, because in that moment, I could have made someone feel the same way I felt, and I obviously did not want that to happen. So all in all, I feel like I learned a lot from this experience. I learned that when you tend to give more respect, you tend to expect receiving it from somebody else as well. And I feel like I would not have realized this if I wasn't, for the past 24 hours, consciously giving respect to other people. You only really realize this when you feel like, okay, I'm making an effort, I'm actively trying to give respect to somebody, and you kind of want that back in return. But I realized that just because I didn't receive that respect, it doesn't make it right for me not to give it to somebody else either. So in general, I feel like, yeah, respect should be a two-way street, but that's not the point of respect. You shouldn't only give respect if you're gonna get it in return. In general, respect is just a thing that you should be giving, and if someone doesn't give it to you, you shouldn't think of them in a negative way and ruin somebody else's day. So all in all, I would say that from this experiment, from the good, I learned that you're able to give certain body language that will not be mistaken as just politeness, but also as respect. And from the ugly, I learned a lot just in general about respect and what I feel like the definition of respect is. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Very nice. See? Okay, I'll step over that way, please, so I can get you back in the center of the screen. Very nice. Okay, let's start on this side today.
Hello, I'm Chang.
Hi, John.
Give them a class participate.
So-
Chung what?
Chang Wei Ting.
Chung Wei King.
That's
got it?
all.
Yeah. Okay, so I really like the way you mark the transitions in your speech, which made it easy for the audience to follow where you are in the narrative. So I thought that was a really good aspect of the speech.
Oh, that's right. Improvement, sir. Hi, Danny. How can you improve? That's your job. Thank you, Danny. Let me start on the positive. Thank you for allowing me to give my anti-hand steepling lecture. And I want you to notice tonight, Saloni, when you watch yourself on YouTube, that, does anybody have a little stapler, a little hand stapler I can borrow? Yeah. When you watch yourself tonight on YouTube, you will see that you went back to it a few times. Thank you so much. That's kind of you. Very nice. Give her a point for that. What's your name?
Spencer.
Spencer. Yeah, he's always on the ball. Good. Thanks, Spencer. But you went back to it. So it's a real habit, you know.
Yeah.
But start learning, if you haven't already, to start becoming sensitive to nonverbal. I don't know if you know much about my background, but I specialize in reading nonverbal communication of juries. In fact, I worked on the O.J. Simpson trial as a jury consultant, try to understand how the jury was reacting during the trial. And they gave away a lot of nonverbal cues during the testimony, especially the scientific testimony. Very abstract. Anyway, so thank you for letting me point out your steepling, and it did come back. Well, let's talk about your introduction. I don't know that it met the category of a poem, a quote, a story, or any of those. It was just sort of a series of observations, and I'm polite, I'm courteous, I wasn't sure if this was going to work. It was kind of like, I hope it works, maybe it didn't work, maybe it will work. I'm not sure it really grabbed me. It was okay, but, you know, I think it could have been more effective, a better grabber. So that would be my suggestion there. Your thesis preview, and by the way, I noticed you abandoned the essay, which I asked not to do, and turned in an outline. And when you turn in an outline, use the Roman numerals that I give you in the prompt. There's 7 of them. And you left off the Kaiback and a few others. So, and that's why I put a Roman numeral on them to designate the importance. Yeah.
So no essay?
What?
So don't turn in the essay?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm looking. You weren't here for all the class, but I want all of your speech things that you hand me to be in an outline form. And I want you to learn to work off an outline form and developing and putting together a speech, because that's how you're going to best learn it extemporaneously. You're really setting yourself up for failure if you try to memorize an beautifully written English essay. You can't do it. You know, most people can't anyway. So, on your thesis preview, it was sort of half there, and we kind of got it out, but it could have been made a little more crisp with your voice, with, so to say. You said preview thesis. Yeah. And the good, the bad, and you didn't really call it the ugly. You just sort of said good and the bad and the I don't know what. And, you know, so on the good, yeah. I want to talk about this experience you had with your professor. You know, students, pardon me for sounding like an old fart, but students are very rude to professors on this campus, in my opinion. They have their computers open. They openly laugh and talk in these big lecture halls. They're munching on Subway sandwiches. They're having a gay old time back there while the professor's lecturing. And if you don't think that the professor looks out and can see all of this, they can. Just as when you were talking now and looking out, you could see it. You could see everyone, who was whispering, whose eyeballs were on you, etc., etc. So what I'm leading up to is she was just happy to have someone listening to her and not, you know, rolling their eyeballs. Or you have a phone handy, you know, I don't know, you know, and not, you know. She would just have somebody taking notes and listening to her. There's a famous story, Arthur Rubinstein, the great Chopin pianist. You probably have never heard of him. But he had a habit. He would always have the house lights up for his concerts, and he would walk along the front row, and he would choose usually an older woman or man that he would decide to play his piece 4 and 2. And many times the people would come backstage and say, I know you were playing for me. That's an extraordinary thing. They knew, and your professor knew you were listening and paying attention. One of my, I'll just make one more point and then we'll get off of it. One of my female debaters was interested in the, God help her, the structure of glass. I don't know why, but she went and to a guest lecture from a professor who also was interested in the structure of glass. I don't know why he was interested in it either, but he was. She sat in the front row and took notes. He was so impressed, he talked to her afterwards, gave her his card, and got her a graduate internship at his university. And, you know, these little things happen from just, you know, respect, courtesy, and making a contact, you know. So, okay, the bad, I warned you, people will ignore you. You're clenching yourself again. You can just keep them relaxed. And then the ugly, yeah. You decided you're the type of person, you're a get-even person, aren't you? Someone slams a door, you slam a door. You don't take anything from anybody type person, right? And that's not the kind of thing to play forward. I mean, I think it's time. That's when you need to open 2 doors, you know. And that's the spirit of forgiveness and to, you know, there's many stories in history of people that have gotten real crap from people and still forgiven them, you know. And maybe she didn't see you, maybe she did, and she's just born in a barn and didn't have parents, didn't know that this is right. I know people complain that 10 people come in and not a one of them thank them at the dorms. I get this all the time in these speeches, But what you learned, I thought, was well put. And the final thing I would say is just when you watch yourself tonight on YouTube, try to develop a sense of your body awareness. Because I don't think you're aware of what your body's doing all the time when you're speaking, right? So many times what I've found is useful is there's the recreation department and the South Campus. They offer classes in a Chinese exercise system called Tai Chi. I don't know if you ever heard of it, where people move very slowly. But I found students that I send to this get a better sense of their mind-body connection. And you might benefit from that if you're really disconnected from what your body is doing at all times. So that or yoga maybe, okay? So thank you very much. Okay, next. On down. Okay, step forward, yes, good. Yes, very nice. Take a step over that way, good. Daisy stands before us, managing attention, communicating respect non-verbally, calmly send the eyes near the front and center, say your name, feel the love, start your speech.
Hi everyone, I'm Daisy.
Hi, Daisy.
Hello. I want to tell you about an experiment I conducted this past weekend in which I communicated respect both verbally and non-verbally to the people around me. I decided to conduct this experiment back in my hometown because generally every time I've communicated respect here at UCLA, it's reciprocated. I work at the front desk at the dorm I live in, and anytime I smile at a resident or I tell them to have a good day, they smile back and they tell me to have a good day. That being said, I wanted to do this back home because I wanted to see if communicating respect would change outside of an educational institution. And this experiment was made up of 3 components: the good, the bad, and the ugly. For the good, probably the best experience I had during this experiment was when I went to this boba shop near my mom's house. It had just opened, so this place was foreign to me, and I didn't know if I wanted to venture out and try a new drink or order my usual milk tea. But as soon as I walked in, I greeted the cashier with a smile, and I asked her how she was, and I maintained eye contact with her throughout our communication. And I noticed an immediate change in her. She perked up, she smiled, and it was like her eyes brightened when I asked her how her day had been. She walked me through the menu and she convinced me to try her favorite drink, which is mango green tea. And after this, I sat down, and when she called me to get my drinks, I noticed that there were 4 on the table instead of the 3 I had ordered. So she had given me a free drink. And I don't want to give all the credit to me communicating respect, but I think it definitely helped and maybe motivated her to give me a free drink. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the bad. Like many of my peers, the bad consisted of being ignored. And my particular experience happened at a supermarket. I greeted the cashier there the same way I greeted the one at the boba shop, but she was a little bit more distant and her responses were more short and to the point. It seemed almost like she didn't want to talk to me, and I think that's because there was a huge line behind me, and she kind of just wanted to move along.
Mhm.
And so at the end of our communication, I told her to have a good day, and she just ignored me and moved on to the next text. So that was probably the worst. The ugly